not in Gilmore Lake, but it is in lakes around Gilmore Lake, in the same watershed. The Curly Lake Pondweed has the winter turion. So you see this is the winter bud. I've seen them grow on every single one of the nodes on this plant. This turion acts as a seed bank. So towards the middle of the summer, it'll drop the seeds. They're buoyant, so they'll float around into the lake and then drop down into the lake bed. This is actually one that's starting to sprout a new plant. Curly Leaf Pondweed has the prominent red midvein going up the leaf. It looks lasagna shaped, super curly, and it has serrated edges. None of your other pondweed species have serrated edges, so that's what you're going to want to look for. If the plant has serrated edges and it is alternating leaves, that's probably Curly Leaf Pondweed. But if it's smooth-leaved edges and it doesn't have that red midvein, it's probably another native species. And I'll show you one of the common ones in a little bit. But I want to kind of touch on this growing cycle. Curly Leaf Pondweed has one of the unique growing characteristics because it really doesn't die over the winter. It really likes that cool water. So here, these green figures are the turions. So under the ice, there's still turions present. It's still keeping its shape in the water, and it kind of starts to get a little bit taller gradually as the water warms up and the ice comes off. So if you can imagine, last winter there wasn't really any ice. So there are a lot of lakes that had a Curly Leaf Pondweed. It was there all year, which is incredible. Once that ice comes off and that sun hits that water, Curly Leaf is the first one to pop up and is the first one to be seen in lakes. So here's spring, it's already at the surface. Between June and July is when those turions start to come up. Once July gets a little bit into July, like middle of July, those turions will start to fall down into the lake bed. One turion, if it falls this year, doesn't have to sprout a new plant up to 5 years. So if you have a fixed stand of Curly Leaf Pondweed and all those turions are getting dropped into the lake bed, those turions can last at least 5 years without creating a new plant. The turion looks like a little pine cone and it's buoyant, so if it's windy, a lot of boat action, and it just keeps getting turned up into the lake. Turions is the winter bud. That's primarily its means of propagation. I haven't seen really much about the leaves like Eurasian. I would be more concerned about the turion than it losing its leaves and starting new things. One thing to note is because this species does start to die off into the late summer, that dead plant material, if it doesn't survive the warm summer, can cause algae blooms. Just because of that dead material, the water is warming up. A lot of that phosphorus that was taking up during the summer can get released into the lake. So we have seen lakes that have curly leaf have those algae blooms later on into the season just because of that dead plant material decaying in the bottom. This is from the DNR Surface Water website. This is just a map of where curly leaf is around Gilmore Lake. These are misleading because I didn't actually take a route to the lake. But Gilmore Lake is highlighted in yellow, so I'm not too familiar with the geography in Washburn County, but this lake to the northeast has curly leaf pondweed, this lake to the west has curly leaf, and that lake to the north has curly leaf. Here's a turion in the bunks of a boat. So this turion we found this year on Yellow Lake. Yellow Lake does have curly leaf pondweed, but this is how mysterious or where it can actually get into these nooks and crannies. So if you're not looking at your bunks, this could have started a new plant in a lake that didn't have curly leaf. So my intern, I stationed those guys out every weekend, and he found that this year, which is really concerning. So I don't have much to say about the viability of those. As long as they're wet, they would probably last. There isn't a whole lot of studies on the viability of the turions, but watershed lakes are they usually trade invasive species. So I would just keep that in mind when you're doing prevention, is that you do have a lot of lakes